Player number 2, I am gushing with emotion and excitement like a kid on Christmas here. Tom, we're going to talk about Tony Pollard, going right now RB8, overall 17. Looking about the mid-second round, still just 26 years old. Ankle sprained 8 months ago in January, and he underwent, Tom, like you talked about, that tightrope procedure. Give me the good news about Pollard. I hope it's good news. I saw him have a one-hand catch today in practice, and I got real excited. So give me more good news, please.
I think there's so many reasons to be excited about Tony Pollard. But let's talk about the injury first. It was in the playoffs, fibula fracture and high ankle sprain. And sometimes with that, they will have to put screws and plates in the fibula to ensure that that heals properly. Does not sound like that was the case. Sounds like the only surgery was the tightrope to address the high ankle sprain. So that means less hardware in there, which is always a good thing. We're always talking about how these major ankle surgeries, sometimes they don't regain the range of motion. Well, if they don't have hardware in there, it's much easier to regain that range of motion. And timeline, the length of the offseason is enough time for him to be fully rehabbed from this. And he's been full go in practice in training camp. And guess what? They still haven't added anyone. Zeke's gotten signed. Dalvin Cook's gotten signed. Sure, Fournette and Hunt are still out there. But at the moment, it looks like Dallas is comfortable with their current running back room. And Tony Pollard has shown that he's elite in all facets of playing the running back. And I don't believe that this injury is going to impact his production. Perhaps a slight elevation in injury risk. But the rest of his list is, in 2019, a knee sprain that he missed one game. His injury list is so thin compared to all these other running backs that if we look at them as a whole, he's got one of the lower risks for injury.
Even if there was a little risk of injury, I still love him. But you did give me good news, Tom. That makes me like him even more. For me, I have him as my RB4, only behind CMC, Bijan, and Chubb. Listen, my love for Pollard has been I've been bullish on this guy for, I think it was one of our figure it out segments last year, Tom. He's been better than Zeke for 3 years. Last year, even Zeke 3.8 yards per carry to Pollard's 5.2. Guy's talent and ability just in general, I think he's a top. I don't think it's crazy for me to call him a top 3 running back in the league. Last year, Tony Pollard finishes the RB7, playing less than 52% of the snaps.
Unreal.
Guys,
so freaking talented.
We don't need him to play 75% of the snaps or 80% of the snaps. Give Tony Pollard 60 to 65%. He smashes. He doesn't just meet his ADP. He's going to smash it, right? In his featured games last year, I'll go through this quickly. 14 carries, 131 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a catch for 16 yards. That's a game-winning week. It's a league-winning week for you. Another week, 22 carries, 115 yards, touchdown, and 3 catches. Had another game with 189 total yards and 2 touchdowns. This is what's most important to me here, Tom. Last year's for the Cowboys had 231 carries. Malik Davis had 38. So aside from Pollard, that's 269 carries. This year, the backups, right? Zeke's gone. Malik Davis, a suspended Ronald Jones, you said they didn't add anybody, and Deuce Vaughn. Do we think those 3 guys are going to combine for 269 carries?
Absolutely
no. Give him 150 carries. Feed Pollard another 100 carries. How much better can it get than RB7? Well, that's why I have him ranked as RB4. He could be 4. He could be 3. He could be 2. Not crazy. He could be 1, Tom.
I think he could be 1. I definitely think he could finish RB1.
Yeah. And all this behind the PFF graded 6th best offensive line. Tony Pollard, man, give me that man everywhere possible. The guy last year that I loved, I still love the player. He's just 23 years old. Javonte Williams, going late, rightfully so, probably with all his injuries. RB25, overall 68, which is good enough for a 6th rounder. And Tom, you always talk to me. I text you all the time. Tom, tell me why I shouldn't take Javonte, and you just keep saying how involved his injuries were. I mean, the MCL, ACL, LCL, tears. Talk to us about how involved the injury was and how worried we should be for a guy going now in the 6th round.
Yeah, well, I'm going to correct you again on the anatomy. It was an ACL and a posterior lateral corner. So a lot goes into the posterior lateral corner. There's a ton of tissues in there that have to be repaired. And with that, it slows down the early stages of rehab, slows down the range of motion, the weight bearing, and then it delays the timeline for running and stuff like that. But all that's behind him now, and everything at this point looks really, really good. Sounds really good. Well, sounds really good. We haven't watched him play in a game yet, so we can't say that he looks good yet. But the same stats above apply. In year one after an ACL, running backs see a 35% decrease in their points per game. And since 2017, at least, not a single one has met or exceeded their pre-injury points per game. So I love everything I'm hearing about his rehab, but history tells us that it's going to be a very uphill battle for him to have a super productive season, and really to have a season that's going to outperform what his current ADP is, I believe. I don't think he's going to be at totally 100% at any point this season, but I think the second half of the season we'll start to see him trending towards that. There's just a lot of everything has to go right for him to return his ADP. And so far, everything has, but the real test hasn't even started yet. He hasn't played an NFL game yet. There's so much that goes into this physically, but also emotionally and mentally that we just don't have the insight into. And there's just other guys that I'm taking in the 6th round. In the 7th, maybe I would consider him. I do think he's in a nice scheme where Sean Payton is really creative with throwing to his running backs. So that could go, from a situational standpoint, that could go in his favor. But I'm willing to miss on him this year.
He's a guy, well said. He's a guy you got to think about. If you pass on him, are you going to hate yourself later in the year? Is he a guy that can bury you? And statistics don't lie, Tom. They're all on our website, fantasyinjuryteam.com. It shows that with these injuries, thanks for correcting me on the injuries, Tom, he's going to see a big drop-off. I love the scheme. I love Sean Payton. I think he's going to come. He's done miraculous things for offenses historically and for fantasy running backs historically. I just wish he was fully healthy. To me, it's a fair ADP, the 6th round. I mean, listen, Samaje Perine is there. He's a capable NFL runner. You answered my question. I was going to ask you, could he be a sneaky guy for the second half of the year? It's going to be hard to stash him. You did say you think he'll be a little bit better, but probably not up to 100%. I like him, but I think the 6th round, you probably should get someone that is a lock, a starter for your team. If he slips in the 7th or 8th, I'd pull the trigger on Javonte.